All right, good morning again. We are the 2021 Board of Equalization and Review for Union County. We have been appointed by the county commissioners to hear any and all taxpayers with respect to concerns or complaints regarding the evaluation of the property for tax purposes. Property owners appearing before the Board of Equalization and Review have the right to a fair and equitable hearing. The Board of Equalization and Review has been charged with ensuring that the proper legal principles have been applied in an evaluation dispute for tax purposes. The format is the following. The clerk calls the case and locates the property or explains the situation if it's personal property. The appellant presents his or her case. The assessor's office offers defense. Both parties will be given the opportunity to rebut or conclude their comments. All questions should be directed to me. The board will rule on the case or table it and inform the taxpayer when it will be reopened. The taxpayer will be notified in writing of the board's decision. By statute, the burden of proof is on the taxpayer to demonstrate that the assessment is erroneous. I ask you, please silence your cell phones. And what will happen, we're going to hear every case in order. We won't rule on the case after we hear your complaint or your concern. And then after all the complaints or concerns are heard, then we will reopen and then we'll follow that same format in the decision process. All right, let's start the proceedings.
Marshall, ID number 07058292. Leila Emil Stati. There is no show.
No show? Okay.
Partial ID number 051-80016. Timothy Woodward.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Hope you are.
Good, I'm sure didn't want to go first.
Congratulations.
My name is Tim Woodward. My property is 9302 Deer Run Road. As the documents that I brought in or I sent in were an appraisal done in 2019. We had a Wells Fargo home equity loan, and their appraisal was done. It's about 40 pages approximately, and that number is. Do I talk about numbers or?
Sure.
Okay. The assessment was $568,000. The appraisal that was done in last year, about a year ago, was $429,394. I've put together three comps, what I found on the tax records anyway, that were similar in square footage, and which are there, and those are included in the paperwork that I have. This assessment that was done for this year is actually 89.8% over last year's, and which seems excessive to me, but wanted to come in and appeal that. What more do you need to know or want to hear?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I don't mean to interrupt, I apologize. There's some additional information in this hearing that should not be there. Those first several pages are additional paperwork that was printed before that's not relevant to his appeal. It should not be in the book.
Yeah. We should probably start right at his letter from Wells Fargo.
That map and the list of comps is the beginning of his appeal information.
Now, some of the comps that I found, acreage is, in some cases, acreage is lower. In fact, all of them are lower. But to me, what's important is I have 10 acres, and 7 of that is in a floodplain, so it doesn't really count as acreage if you can't use it. And then the other, for me, an important detail is We live on a road that is a dirt road and not state or county maintained, so we pay for our own road maintenance, which to me is something that we've tried to get the state to take over when I first built this house in 2000. And at that point, they wanted $30,000 per household just to consider taking over the maintenance of that road. So at this point, for the last 20 years now, we've been doing our own road maintenance on that road. It's 9/10 of a mile long.
How many houses on that road?
There are 10 houses. One is being built right now.
Ray, got any questions?
The appraisal by Wells Fargo was done in January of 2020?
Actually, yeah, he came out, I think that's when they sent it to us, but they actually did the appraisal in December of 2019.
Okay, thank you.
Dutch?
When you mentioned the large disparity between the county's value and the appraised value that you got in here with the appraisal,
Yes.
were there any improvements done to the property between the appraisal time and the assessment?
No, just general maintenance.
Okay, okay.
All right.
Well, I don't understand about the road.
Turn your mic up again.
Does,
Right here.
There you go.
I know with a new subdivision now, or even a private road,
It's considered a private road.
3 or more houses equates to the state. The contractor is required, or the homeowner is required to build a state-maintained road. Does that not apply with that many houses?
That I don't know. When I first built the house, and I acted as my own contractor in building the house in 1999, we had a retired man there that was trying to get the state to take over. At that point, I think there were 6 or 7 houses on the road. And they came up with that number that we would have to have $30,000 per house just to bring the road up to where the state would consider taking it over. Most of the people on our road are retired, so nobody wanted to put up that much money. But at this point, it is. We have basically tractors. One neighbor has a Bobcat. We get loads of gravel to put on the road, and that's where our maintenance comes from.
Are any of your neighboring properties, they have large tracts of land like you do on yours?
Yeah, in the deed, or in the, I don't know what you call it, the procedures, I guess, it says a minimum size of 4.5 acres. Mine is 9.89. Most of them are either in the 9s or as low as 5.
Okay,
All of them 5 to 10, so.
okay.
And I believe there are 21 total lots.
All right, nothing else, we'll hear from the county.
Well, if you will, get out and take a look at the copper report. That's our main defense for our value. It supports the value that I'm presenting to the board today. It's an adjustment down to 521.1. I believe the gentleman was contacted and informed of the new value. The comps pulled were, you can see the mileage is 2.84 miles on comp number 1 on Thursday Church Road. The comps are adjusting for the difference in acreage. Subject's at 9.79, the first comp's at 8.5. You can see there's an adjustment there. And that's being made. There's a difference in square footage, and there's a sizable adjustment being made there as well to bring it in line with the subject, make it more comparable. And so comp number 2 is 2.89 acres, and comp 3, 1.41. But again, comp is making all the adjustments His house, the reason I'm stating this.
Hang on, Brad.
Do you,
He said
do you,
he doesn't have
is
that.
this in our book?
Yes, it should be.
I have not seen the comps, your comps either.
Page what?
Should be page one of that hearing, once you get past that article that was in there, in here.
Page,
Yeah,
here at the
that's
very
still.
beginning.
So at the beginning.
Yeah, that's it right there.
Thank you.
Where's it at in here? Oh, this, okay. Okay.
Yeah, remember, yeah.
You got it? Yeah.
Sorry about that.
All right, let's begin again. Start.
Okay, so everybody has the comp report in front of them?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, you'll see I have three comps, and the subject is a good quality home. In the area that the gentleman's in, there weren't very many good quality homes to pull from right in his subdivision. So had to pull outward and find them outside the subdivision to find homes that were most comparable to his. So by doing that, I extended my range out, I believe, to about 4 miles, and I've got these three comps that were the most comparable to his. Narrowed it down to these three. They had the least amount of adjustments and seemed to be most comparable. If I went out a little further, I was getting some more comps, but they were maybe 30, 40 acre parcels that sold homes on. So these had the least amount of acreage, again, most comparable to the subject that I could find in his area. So the first one, comp number 1, as you can see, has a little less acreage, a little more square footage, and expect the adjustments for that. Comp 2 has less acreage, more square footage, and you can see the adjustments. And comp 3 has less acreage and more square footage, and you can see the adjustments. The overall adjustment was the overall value came to be 521.1, and that's the value that we put on the property. That's the staff recommendation, that is 521.1 based on these comps. And just to speak to the appraisal that was submitted, again, it was late 19, 12/21 of 19 was the day of the appraisal, and we've had a very strong market since then. So these comps are all from 2020. Late, we have one that the first one was August, the second one was in February, and the third one was in October 2020. So that's the basis for supporting the value of the building property.
The values, let's use comp 1. You got 494. Is that what it's appraised for, or is that what the tax value of that property?
No, sir, if you look at the top, under comp 1, you see the image and the address, then next is the ID, and the fourth item there is the sale price
Okay.
and the date. And that 494 is what the adjustments come up to be in the suggested price for, after all the adjustments, making it comparable to the subject.
So it's effectively an adjusted sale price.
Right.
What was Mr. Woodward's former tax value?
His former tax value
299.9, I believe.
was, yeah, back in 2020 was 499.
299.
Excuse me, 299. That was prior to the reappraisal.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, sir. Ray.
For the benefit of Mr. Woodward, as well as the rest of the taxpayers, he made a comment in his presentation. I want to make sure that we clear up for the room. This is not a one-year change from 2020 to 2021.
Right.
These values that you were assessed at in 2020 were in place in 2015. So it's a 6-year change and not a one-year change. So I want to make sure that we're all on the same page with that from an appeal standpoint.
Okay. Also now, just if I may comment on that, so this reevaluation is something that all of us are going to have for the next, 6 or 8 years. Is it fair that we take these numbers in a very strong market, and should that market go down, and we're kind of screwed for the next 6 or 8 years?
I don't disagree.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, Brad.
If I can respond to that. Back in 2015, we lowered the values in the county, and those values stayed in place through the entire reval process through that whole period until current at lower rates. So it works whether we're in a down market or an up market, whatever we appraise it as a reval, that's what we're at until the next reval. So.
And you may not have been aware of that, but they did drop all property values in 15, pretty substantial. So,
Okay.
so it's kind of like me as a property owner, used property owner, have that luxury to have a lower tax base than we actually should have.
And the percent of increase is not directly reflected on what the tax bill will be either.
Yeah.
It really depending on what the market does. I mean, he mentions 6 to 8 years, which it was, 6 years before, but
It was 8 years before.
yeah, and it could be 6, 8, but it could be 2, you know. That's really up to the way the sales ratios hit and what the county commission decides to do.
Yeah, all that's out of our hands.
Right. Could be a shorter time frame, but it could be just as long, too.
I see.
Yeah.
Ray, Dutch, anything else?
So, Mark, right, what you're saying is, in regard to his question, Mr. Woodward, you've enjoyed from 215 till now the lower price value of your house. And then like he said, until the next revaluation, which may be 4 years and not 6, who knows? Then you deal with it at that time. But the theory is, I think, that that through the equalization, if your house goes up 50%, that doesn't mean you're gonna have a 50% increases in your taxes.
That's correct.
In
So
theory.
that's a function of the budget process that the county commissioners go through. The tax rate, and just again for benefit of the room, the tax rate is adjusted down in a revaluation year when property values go up. By statute, they are required to publish a revenue neutral tax rate, and that means the county doesn't generate any more money for the prior year than they do in the current year than they did the prior values. Now, they have to publish that so it's known. It doesn't mean they have to adopt it, but I can tell you historically, the board has reduced the tax rate in a revaluation year in Union County. Except for 15, the values went down, so they had to move it slightly the other way to make sure the revenue stayed similar. That's not a function of the valuation process. That is a function of the budget process, and the tax office is actually not involved in that. From that standpoint, that is a county commissioner and budget department decision.
Okay. I have just one more thing, if it's okay. On the appraisal, which was 2019, he used 3 comps on there, and I pulled those 3 comps that he used and looked at the evaluation of those 3 comps. His comps were appraised at 357, 365, and 405. Those were the comps those were the new evaluations of the comps that were used in the appraisal, which I've included in the paperwork that I brought in.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Woodward.
Thank you. You need this back? Thank you.
All right, case 4.
Parcel ID number 09298143, Iva and Arthur Earl.
Good morning,
Mr.
Art.
Chairman,
How you doing, sir?
morning, members. Same situation, different numbers. My appraisal was last fall. We were going to upgrade the house, and we've been in it for 32 years, or 31 years, so we wanted to know how much money we should spend on it. So I got the house appraised and looked everything over and moved forward from there. You should have a copy. Well, there you go, of the appraisal. And it's same situation as the prior situation. That's it.
We'll have a lot of that, Art, won't we, Art? All right, we'll hear from the county. How you doing, Floyd?
Basically, when I looked at his appraisal, it looked like a...
Floyd, turn your mic on.
Okay, can you hear me now? Sorry.
Good problem.
Yeah, basically, when I looked at the appraisal, for the time frame that the appraisal was done, it looked like a good appraisal. But what I noticed that a couple of the sales were from 2019, and I think he had one from 2020. So I just decided to go to Comper and just to pull up some sales, just to see, you know, if the appraisal was in line or you know, maybe either lower or you know, see if our value was correct. And after I ran the Comper report, I've got four sales, and in his subdivision, we have an average plus quality home. That's the subject's quality of home is average plus, and we do not have any sales of average plus inside his neighborhood. I'm thinking there may be, 10 homes in there on those streets?
It doesn't.
About maybe
Yeah.
10. So, you know, wasn't a lot to choose from for sales to compare it with, so I had to go outside of his neighborhood, which his appraisal that he submitted also had to do the same thing, to go outside his neighborhood. And so basically, I went outside his neighborhood, not too far away. I got 2 sales from Fox Hunt, which is just down the street, around the corner from him. And I've got one from Yorkshire and one from Hilton Meadows. And looking at his appraisal, he also used one from Hilton Meadows, 2 from Fox Hunt, and let's see. Yeah. And the sales that I used were all from 2020, and the heated square footage ranged from 1,900 to 2,600. Subject appraisal used 2 sales from 2019 and also mentions there had been updates to kitchen and bathroom. So I thought that our Comper sales analysis, it came up to 316.3, and we have the assessed value at 293.6, which is below the suggested value from Comper. So that's why I did not change the value.
You said the tax value now is 293.6. Did I hear that right, Floyd?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Assessed value is 293.6.
No comment.
If I could comment on the Copper's comps, is, you know, we have our scheduled values, that's what generated the 293.6. We use the Copper and the subject's appraisal just as a kind of a check on it, does it make sense? Again, the appraisal was a little older, the fee appraisal was a little older, Copper came in at a little higher value, they're all in the relative same ballpark, but we stuck with our original valuation because we're getting a little different, pulled in a little different directions depending on what sales we went with, and the positive thing about sticking with the scheduled values is applicable to all the other properties on the block, so we felt that was the most appropriate thing to do in this case.
Any questions for the county or Mr. Earl? Ray, that's,
I'm good, I think.
all right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Earl.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Did somebody?
Those we thank you.
Council ID number 06-180-275, and Daryl Shipman.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm John Shipman. This parcel is actually owned by my parents, my father there, also John Shipman. And I've looked at these on their behalf, and I was going to speak on their behalf if that's okay with everybody.
Fine, Mr. Shipman?
That's fine.
Okay, all right.
I'm old school, he's new school.
I'm with you.
We went the gray area.
And just as by way of background, this involves a subject property in the Providence Downs community. This is the original Providence Downs community. It's over in the Ray Road, Providence Road area, right on the Mecklenburg County line on the north side of the county, for anybody that's not familiar with the location. Now, the comps for this neighborhood are somewhat interesting. The comps range anywhere from the high 130s, average sale price per square foot, all the way up to 200, even north of 210 in some cases. So it's a pretty big variance. I mean, a 50% variance in a neighborhood like that, which has pretty strict architectural and building controls to start with, is a little bit unusual. And I wanted to kind of go through the three reasons why I think that, it's unusual, specifically in the context of how this property was appraised. And I think you'll sort of understand from that why this property needs to be valued on the lower end of that average per square foot comp as opposed to the higher end. And I think the first item that I wanted to just briefly discuss with you guys was the lot revaluation. The lot revaluation went up 55%. Mr. Harrell, as you pointed out, that's obviously over a 6-year period. Went from, I believe, 129,900 up to 200,000 even. Now, it's important to note that every property I've looked at in the neighborhood has the same $200,000 lot appraisal. So I think, every lot in the neighborhood, regardless of whether it was a corner lot, acre and a half, 0.66, it appears as though they were all set at $200,000. Now, this community is obviously built out, so there's no comps for individual lot sales that we can really look at. So I think what we can really look at, the only thing to look at, is how this particular lot compares to the others. Like I said, the lots in this neighborhood range anywhere from 0.6 of an acre to 1.5 acres plus. This property has about, I believe it's 0.6 of an acre, give or take. That's on the smaller end of the neighborhood. It's not one of the more desirable lots, meaning it's not on the corner. It's not a lake view lot like some of the lots. It doesn't back up to a natural area. It's your typical narrow lot that's squeezed into a street. And, in the realm of lots in the neighborhood, it's going to be on the lower end, which I believe is closer to 129,000, which was the old appraisal. And I think just on the size alone, I know, Floyd, you had spoken to my father and gave him the comp properties that were used. And those lots in general were about 20% larger. One was a corner lot, one was a large cul-de-sac lot. So not only were the lots larger, but they were also what are deemed more desirable lots, corner lots, lots that don't back up to other properties and things like that. So I think just as a sort of initial matter on the lot, before you even get to the improvements, I do think, a downward adjustment is justified. And I think the 129 number that it was originally appraised at before this reevaluation is pretty close to accurate. You'll see, I got this packet, if you guys have it in front of you. It says Exhibit A on the front. I put in as Exhibit A here just a brief summary, and Floyd had sent this over to us, which was very helpful. This showed the 4 comp properties that the county used, and I've also made some notes on there in handwriting you'll see with respect to the lot sizes. But the second item that I think explains a lot of the variance in this neighborhood in terms of the comp average per square foot values is the renovations and updates that have happened on certain of the houses. There's a wide discrepancy in this neighborhood between the interior finishings of houses. If you're kind of looking at it as a 1 to 10 scale, a 1 being let's just say a spec track home that's a starter home, no real nice finishings on the inside, just basic builder's grade. On one end is a 1, and a 10 being sort of the nicest, finishings on a mansion in this county. This property has somewhere in a 5 to 6 ratio in terms of the finishings on the property, whereas most of them in the neighborhood and all of the ones that were used as the 4 comp properties are more in the 8 to 9 range. And again, I've got photographs to show that. These are publicly available photos. I've got them on a jump drive if you guys want to see them. I don't know if I can hook them up. I think once you see the photos, we're not talking about minor issues like, does one have crown molding? Does one have hardwood floors or another? These are pretty significant variances in the finishings. And it's not just finishings that were made at the time they were built, but it's also upgrades and total renovations that most of the houses in the neighborhood have undergone in the last 15 or 16 years, whereas this property has not been upgraded or renovated at all. In fact, as a lot of the things in the house have broken, they've in fact been downgraded. For example, just to use the best example there is, when the $12,000, Sub-Zero built-in refrigerator broke, it certainly wasn't replaced with a $12,000 refrigerator. It was, of course, replaced with something more sensible. And that's been kind of the situation for the whole house. So you'll find that this property, particularly when compared to the 4 comp properties that were used, are definitely on a much lower end in terms of the finishings and just the overall quality and the improvements on the property. And again, if you guys want to we can quickly go through these, or if you don't think that's relevant, you certainly don't have to look at them. They're all publicly available on Zillow for the 4 comp properties, so that's where they came from. And if you look at them, some of them rival Mar-a-Lago, so it's pretty apparent that there's a distinction. And just the final point that I wanted to make regarding the valuation in general, and that's the third point, which is exterior improvements to a lot of these properties. This neighborhood in particular has a lot of houses in there, including 3 out of the 4 of the comp properties that have invested significant 6-figure sums in exterior improvements, pools, cabanas, bathhouses, terrace gardens, things of that nature, resort-style amenities. And if you look at the comp properties, 2 of them have large swimming pools, showers, outdoor bathrooms, pool houses, covered cabanas, again, terrace gardens. 2 of them, just the HOA mandated fence around them is $30,000 worth of fencing before you even get to the pool or any other amenities. So, some of these comp properties have upwards of $100,000, $150,000 just in exterior improvements, things like pools and that matter. Whereas, this property has none of those. It's what you would call kind of a vanilla backyard. There's a slab of stamped concrete and that's kind of it. No outdoor kitchen, no pools, no things like that. And you'll see, with respect, going back to the range, high 130s, low 140s, all the way up to 200, 210. Those that fall in the higher end of the range, the 175 and up, are generally those that have those exterior improvements, that are on the nicer end of the finishing range, that have more desirable lots. And I think if you do sort of look at all the information in the packet and sort of kind of give it a comparison side by side with the comps that were used, you're going to see that this property really belongs on the very low end of what those properties and the comps are selling for in that neighborhood, which is right around the high 130s, low 140s. And you'll see on Exhibit A, the comps that I would suggest using are also listed along with the average sale price per square foot. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you guys have them.
Ray, you have any?
When was the house built?
2005.
Okay, thank you.
And then, I know where you're coming in per square foot, so your opinion of value, what the county's at $959, $800, so your opinion of value is?
Well, here's the opinion of value. If you look at Exhibit A, you can see exactly my math. On the second page of Exhibit A, I've got the appropriate comps, which are the 3 that I believe are most in line with this house, meaning they don't have huge exterior renovations. They were built around the same time with similar interior finishings. The 3 listed here, the Churchill Downs 1114, the 1404 Churchill Downs, and the 9200 Skipaway. And I put the average sale prices for those most recently, and I just took the average of those prices, which brings you to $138.24 a square foot. And again, I think the overriding thing that I'm trying to get at here is there is a large variance in the average sale prices for houses in this neighborhood. I find it unusual, but once you sort of look at the three things I went through, the exterior improvements, the disparity in how they were finished on the inside, and the lot values, you'll sort of understand which ones belong on top and which ones belong on bottom. And I think, again, this one really does belong in that 138, 140 per square foot in order to fall in line with the most accurate comps.
Okay. No other questions?
All these lots, no matter where they're located, 200,000, right?
That's correct. Every lot in the neighborhood appears to be valued at 200,000. And again, I think that's the most objective. Reasonable minds can differ on a lot of things, but a lot that's 1.5 acres versus one that's 0.6, you know, there's of course going to be a difference. But I appreciate that for convenience, you guys have to do things like that.
All right. Let's hear from the county.
Let me address one issue off the top, and I'll let Floyd go into details. This is a subdivision that custom homes. So I totally agree. There's a lot of variance in quality of construction. We've tried to account for that by what we call a quality or grade adjustment. All the properties on our comparable list are what we call excellent. There's also excellent pluses. I don't know if we have any superiors in there. So we do recognize that they're not all apples and apples and apples. And we try to account for that as much as we reasonably can by grade. So we only try to say the apples to the apples to the apples. You know, it's a judgment call. Some people might disagree exactly what we call it an apple and what we call it an orange. But we do try to account for that within our grading, and I'll let Floyd run from there.
Basically what I did, you guys can see the sales that I used in Comper. I just ran 4 sales, and I tried to stay within the heated square footage. I ran it from 5,000 to 5,900, which is about 500 each side of this square footage. And the 4 sales that I used that came with that, all these were the same grade, same amount on the land. And regarding the land, a lot of times in the beginning, when they develop a new subdivision, they basically go in there and they cut roads in, and there's going to be varying sizes in the lots, you know, depending on how they can shape the roads to come in. There's going to be varying sizes in the lots. So basically, they built those to have a house on it, to sell the lots, and someone build a house on it. You know, sure the acreage is going to vary, but they basically said, well, let's put X amount of dollars, you know, allotted for each of these lots. And so off the top of my head, the 200,000, I think we had a few vacant sales in there for the lots. That's why we came up with 200,000 for the lots. And when I ran the 4 Comper sales, the Comper estimate came out to $1,014,800, and we had the house assessed at $959,800, and that's pretty much what I have. And also, if I can,
Sure.
Comper does allow, make deductions for pools and, you know, any kind of outbuildings that we might have listed. Comper will make an adjustment on that. So if the subject does not have them and one of the sales does, it'll, you know, minus off that amount. Also, the county, we do not list fences on the residential side. Commercial side, they do. Residential side, we do not do fences. And I guess that's pretty much it.
Any questions for the county? Ray, Dutch?
I got one.
Yeah.
Are there grades lower than excellent in that subdivision?
I'm trying to remember, they may or may not, they may be an excellent minus or 2.
Right.
I just can't remember.
That would be the next step down.
That's the next step down.
Excellent minus, and then under that.
There would be a good plus after that.
Okay.
I asked Floyd, well, while the taxpayer was speaking, lowest in that subdivision, top of his head, he got there were the three grades of excellent: excellent minus, excellent, and excellent plus. Subject is currently on as an excellent.
Okay. I like that.
All right, all right.
Okay. Can I just very briefly respond to
Sure,
just
Mr.
one point, just as a matter of point? I think Floyd did a good job evaluating this property. Like I said, with a variance this wide within a neighborhood, I think it's very hard to value it. And I think that's compounded by the fact that there's also no publicly available photos of my parents' house out there like there are all of the comparable properties, because it hasn't been listed for sale since it was originally built. But if you look at the packet that I gave you under Exhibit B, it's right behind the pink tab. I took some of the photos of their home. The first ones were from an appraisal report that was done on it several years ago when they were attempting to refinance. And the ones after that were taken yesterday and frankly printed out on the worst printer I've ever seen. So unfortunately, the clarity isn't great. But if you look at these pictures of the subject property and you sort of take this flash drive, which has the photos of the four comparable properties that were used, you're going to immediately see that, you know, you may call them all excellent, but there's a very big disparity in this property versus those. And again, this is no slight on the appraiser process because, again, they didn't have access to this information. But it will be very apparent that there's a big disparity. And the second point that I just wanted to sort of counter is, you know, Floyd is obviously correct. They do ascribe a value to the exterior improvements. If you look at the four comp properties, for example, like I said, 3 of them have significant outdoor improvements. 2 of them are pools. If you just look at those, one of them, it looks like the OB value, Floyd, is that what would be categorized, the exterior improvements, like a pool? It looks like the added value to that house was, I believe it was $11,400 for a pool, a cabana, a bathhouse, a terraced garden, and like I said, $25,000 just in fencing alone. So, you know, I don't think that the value, frankly, being ascribed to it is really representative of the value. And the last thing I'll say, you know, is that if we're looking at fair market value today, one important thing that I want to point out is that I think most realtors would agree with you today that for the first time in the history of real estate, pools and exterior improvements are being valued more highly than ever. The days of, you know, you pouring a lot of money into it and not getting it back on resale, frankly, in the post-COVID world seem to be over. We have neighbors waiting 2 years on a wait list just to build a pool. Our HOA is stacked up with applications because they can't review them fast enough for pools. The houses in the neighborhood that are going at the high range are the ones that have pools. It's just a new world that we're living in when people want their own pools. And, you know, ascribing $11,000 value to $150,000 for the pools and cabanas and gardens is, I don't think, really an accurate assessment. And I think if you sort of look at those, look at the interiors of these houses, I think you'll see that, you know, getting over $1 million for this house fair market value is way out of line. It's simply, you would never get it, not even close. I think, you know, I think you'll see that. And I'm happy to leave this flash drive with you guys if you want it. With that, again, they're on Zillow, so.
Mr. Chair, I got one question. What is the county's at 959.8, what's your value?
The value I put in the math is on Exhibit A, the 3 comps. I think that this house is valued about $138.24 a square foot. And I got that number by looking at the 3 properties that I listed here as the ones that I think are comparable in the neighborhood, and I averaged it out based on the most recent sales
What
data.
does that come out to?
It comes out to $754,500.
Okay, thank you.
Again, not much off of the 811 that it was valued before this last reval.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Grandpa?
Good luck on the golf course.
Thank you.
One thing I just comment, Floyd, you didn't go in this house to come up with a tax value though, did you?
No, sir.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I mean, and I appreciate your comments, but interior is something that it's a drive-by and some pictures and square footage when the house was built, the permitting, all that's, you know, pretty cookie cutter.
The time we get in the home is when it's under construction.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Floyd, you can come by any time, so.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, thank you. Case number 6.
Next one. Parcel ID number 062-040076, Andrea and Joseph.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Thank you for having us today. So I am also from the Providence Downs neighborhood, and just like the previous family that was just here. And so I do live at 1602 Aladar Court. And I'm here to talk about the proposal to increase the tax assessment to $851,900, which is a $131,500 increase from what it's valued at today at $718,500. So that's an 18.3% increase in the last 2.5 years that I've owned it. So I have not been in the property since 2015. We refinanced this property last summer on June 22nd, and that's what is being handed out to you. There's a rapid appraisal form, and you can see the related tax documents based on the sale of previous homes that Wells Fargo Bank used for the refinance that we did. Our subject property is the one that has the arrow on the document that you have. And what you'll also note is that it was appraised at $655,000 as far as the property value, and I have the highest tax assessed amount for what I paid for what the value of the home was, even as far as the assessment, as far as my appraisal rather. So if you look at sales 1 through 5, they paid more than what the tax assessed amount was, where my tax assessment is higher than the appraisal. So I thought I'd point that out on the document that was provided. The property was abandoned for 3 years prior to us purchasing the home. There was an old woman that lived in the home, and the children that owned the home were fighting over the home and couldn't decide what to do with it. So as a result, when we moved in, we had some water damage from roof issues and water issues around the windows, and there was no landscaping or any kind of nothing was kept out front around the property as far as landscaping. So we've done a lot of work to try to just get grass. We've had weeds. We still have weeds. We get in trouble by the HOA because we live next door to an empty lot that is also unkempt. It's on the corner of Aladar Court. And so all those weeds blow into our yard as we're trying to grow grass for the last 2.5 years in the neighborhood. We are in a gated community, so the county's not paying for the maintenance of our streets anymore. That's what Providence Downs, we've decided as a homeowners association, so we're not reliant upon the county to help pay for our streets. So I thought I'd just share a couple of those points, and I'm open to answer any questions that you may have.
Somebody have any?
Yes,
Right.
so your opinion of values based on what this appraisal is?
The appraisal and then the related appraisals that are in the rapid appraisal form based on comparable sales. And I highlighted the square footage of homes and then also highlighted the tax assessed amount. So I agree with what the current tax assessed amount is at $718. I don't agree with the almost 20% increase in owning the home in the last 2 years, 2.5 years.
I don't have any questions.
Good. All right, good. All right, we'll hear from the county.
Okay, again, after running the compa report, we have the assessed value at $851,900, and using 4 sales from the same neighborhood, same grade. Compa value is at $888,900, which is over what we have assessed for the assessed value. And these are all in, all the sales come from Providence Downs.
Any questions of the county?
So you're at 888,900?
Yes,
The copper suggested value was 888,900, where the value of our CAM system was 851,900. That's for proposing to keep the CAM value of 851,900.
851,900? Okay, thank you.
The only thing I'd add, I know you mentioned you don't look at interiors, but the house was built in 1999 and there's been no upgrades. We just painted the house. That's all we've done in the home. So another disparity, I think, in the neighborhood from what it looks like on the outside versus what's in the inside. Anything else that you guys need to know?
That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Number 7?
Person ID number 093397169, Michael Ward, Nora.
Good
Thank you.
morning.
Good morning. I'm Michael Wall. Nora and I are co-owners of the property. I'm not familiar with the way that assessments are done here. I'm a transplanted Northwesterner. Do the appraisers actually come around to the house or drive through the neighborhood, that sort of thing? Or are they doing this all by looking at documents?
Joe, you want to speak to that?
Yes.
You're free to answer that.
We typically visit the property when it's under construction, definitely.
Right.
We get some of our information, sales information, that sort of thing, from the deed we file. And then we try to revisit the property at least every 8 years because, you know, the characteristics of properties can change over time. So we try to get back periodically to review them. With a home of this age, I'm sure the last time we were out there was when it was under construction.
Okay, thanks very much. In my appeal, I've tried to group the points that I have to make around the two main categories that are in the appeal form that you've sent to us. And they are basically either property not approved, appraised at true market value as of 1/1/21, and its subset, any unusual circumstances that may affect the property value. And the other main category of issues is property is not equally appraised as compared to similar properties. So addressing my opinion of the true market value as of January 1/21, I see that you folks define market value as the most probable price for which a property would sell in a fair sale, buyer and seller, each acting prudently and knowledgeably. The would-be buyer for our house, the prospective buyer acting knowledgeably, would in all likelihood use the nearly universal practice of get a home inspector in there if you're seriously thinking about buying a place. Have a look around. The home inspector would immediately discover that there are 6 what I'm calling deferred maintenance issues with the house, which I will briefly go into, as well as the literally catastrophic state of our roof. Back-to-back windstorms, a very bad one last October, sort of culminated what had been over the years 6 different fellows getting up on the roof and replacing anywhere from 3 to 6 shingles at a time. Cumulatively, all different shingles, and the roof had basically had it. In November, I had a roofer out from Charlotte Pro Roofing while my appeal with Safeco was pending, and he said, it's in such bad shape, this is what we're going to have to do while your appeal with the insurance company is going on. The insurance company, of course, did not want to pay Safeco. He said, we're going to put on tarps. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy's talking about putting canvas patches on my roof. No. Apparently, in the industry, tarps means any sort of a quasi-permanent patch that they put on the roof. These quasi-permanent patches are of a different texture, color, and size from the roof. So that when you drive down my street, you're looking at a roof with 4 different sized raised things that sort of look like blisters. So my point here is that any prospective buyer is immediately going to know whatever I pay for this house, I'm going to have to add the price of a new roof. So I'm saying that knowledgeable buyer would certainly not pay the appraised figure of 3,393, which is what I got from the county. And I'm asking or suggesting that because of that the property not be appraised at such a price. When I first appealed this, I got back appraiser notes to the taxpayer. And the appraiser said that, I pointed out that on the materials that you folks sent me, it's referred to as a 5-bedroom house. It's actually 3 bedrooms plus the bonus room, which I don't know what qualifies a bedroom, but 3 bedrooms plus the bonus room. And the appraiser said to me, we changed the bedroom count from 5 to 4. However, the bedroom count does not change value in our assessments. And I must say that I disagree in that the number of bathrooms and the number of bedrooms in a house are the 2 most important considerations in buying a home if all other factors are identical or highly similar. In deciding between, for example, a 4-bedroom, 3,200 square foot house, ours, and a 3,200 square foot house that has the 5 bedrooms, the 5-bedroom house, other qualities of the house being equal, will be more highly valued by the prospective buyer, is my opinion. In the same document, the appraiser notes to me, there were 0 sales of comparable properties in your neighborhood in I'm saying assessed value, he tells me, was supported by 2020 sales from within my neighborhood. And he tells me that the assessed value was actually below those prices. Comparable prices, comparable sales, I'm assuming refer to houses that are comparable in size to mine. And I look in my neighborhood and I see that there are 6 houses out of 101 that are within either 300 square foot less than our house up to 400 square foot more. So I'm thinking within these parameters, I'm not going to get any closer than this, because after that, the differences are even greater. So there were 6 properties that meet those criteria of kind of sort of the same square footage as us. The last sale of one of those was in 2017, 4 years ago. And the one before that was in 2015, and then you're going back and looking at 2006, 2008. So my point or my issue here is that if you're talking about comparables, and comparables are essentially square footage comparables, there have been no comparable sales within my 101 home community. I was on the board in this community for a couple of years, on the HOA board, and then a couple more years as the HOA board president. So I have probably a better than a nodding acquaintance of who did what to his or her house and what those houses sold for, which ones don't have repairs that were probably needed. The roof, the appraiser tells me that my complaint or my point about the roof being damaged was taken into account when he responded to my complaint, and implication being that he lowered it. He understood, he took it into account. And I doubt that that happened, because the last time you were in my neighborhood looking was about 8 years ago. So I can't get my mind around how he could have taken it into account without seeing it. And what you're looking at is 68 shingles. I don't mean tabs, I mean 68 3-tab shingles are either missing or damaged on the roof. Again, the prospective buyer is not going to miss that. After the took 12 weeks battle with Safeco, and finally I persuaded them to send out a senior evaluator or appraiser, as opposed to, I guess, the less senior guy who came out and said, "Nah, you don't need a new roof." The senior guy was up on my roof for under 10 minutes, and he said, this was essentially a disgrace. He was a Safeco employee. He said, I feel sorry, I apologize. He said, not only is the damage severe, but nobody even bothered to mention that what you also have up here is hail damage. The roof is a complete write-off. Have to replace the roof. So we are waiting for the warmer weather when the adhesion of the shingles is more likely than it is in the cooler weather. But I guess at the risk of repeating myself yet again, any prospective buyer seeing that roof is going to say to himself, 17, 18,000 maybe to put on architectural shingles on this thing. When I asked for an estimate from Charlotte Pro Roofing, he sent in an estimate of $26,000, which I think is bizarrely overpriced. I can get a roof in the 16, 17, 18,000 range, and that's what a prospective buyer would have to pay for the roof. The second category or grouping of things that we're encouraged to put our complaints in on the appeal form is under the header, the property is not equally appraised as compared to similar properties. And I'm saying that unfortunately, since there hasn't been a sale of a comparable home in 4 years, you got me. I think that the best intentioned appraiser has got a problem there in that there are no comps. There are no equally appraised properties in the neighborhood. I'd like to, I've given you, documents that says neighborhood properties comparable to appellant's property listed in order of ascending square footage. So these are the properties that certainly any, I would regard as fair. You want to compare them to these, this is as close as you can get in terms of square footage, but none has sold in the last 4 years.
Mr. Wall, let me stop you right there. I think we got the general gist of your complaint.
Oh, and I'm sorry, there's just a last thing that I can do in
Okay.
like 2 or 3 sentences. I think my predecessor, the young woman who was up here, pointed out that interior deficits are not taken into account. I mean, we're in a community where the average homeowner is about 65 years old. It's a house-proud community. Let's do the landscaping outside, and it's time for a new HVAC, so forth. Not a paintbrush has touched the outside of our house or the inside since we moved in there. So the last time any of that was done was 2006. The HVAC system, if we listen to the common commercial, in dog years is 100 years old. It's the 14-year-old HVAC system. 14-year-old hot water heater. Our hot water HVAC guy says, you're living on borrowed time. Any visit is going to be the visit in which we tell you that you need to replace both. And at that point, yes, I've made whatever points I choose to make.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ray, got any questions?
Yeah, just one, do you have homeowners insurance?
Do I have it?
Do you have homeowners?
Yes, I do.
insurance? Okay, thank you.
That's-
I don't have any.
No.
Gentlemen?
I will say this, in a perfect world, Mr. Wall,
Sorry.
we would, in a perfect world, we would appraise the house from a tax value standpoint as it is right now. And then when you made those repairs, we'd come back out and reassess it. But we don't have that luxury, so we appraise the house, square footage, lot value, and we have to move on. So I understand your house needs some repairs, and I hope those get done real soon. But we just don't have that luxury of revisiting your house when those repairs are done.
I do get that, but what puzzles me is the appraiser saying deductions already applied for roofing. If you've never seen the house, how could you have applied the deductions to the damage that only happened in October of 2020?
Well, we'll get the county right now the chance to answer that.
Okay. Yeah, so as far as what you're talking about on the roof there, his house has 235 shingles, and that is there's deductions on there for that. When referring to new houses, new roofs on houses, usually they go to a heavy architectural, and that is the standard. So if a house has a 3-tab or 235 shingle on the house, there's actually a little bit of deduction in their value just for that. And his house does, show to have 235 shingles on it original. So that there is, I think, a $530 deduction for the roof type already in there. As far as the roofing goes, the house is, I think it's 2007, so
Right.
there's depreciation in there for some of those things. But as far as, what we did is we tried to look at 2020 sales. We have a comper. I guess you guys have that. We picked 3 of the closest comparables we have. His house is one of the larger ones in the neighborhood, so obviously we don't have an exact, house. But based on the 3 2020 sales, Comper suggests that his, value would be close to, it's $378,700. He's currently assessed at $339. Based on our Comper report, he's already at $39,400 below what the market would suggest. So I did not change the value. The $39,400 difference would account for any kind of roofing replacement and anything to that nature.
I just have 2 remarks on that. I understand that the roof is valued at somewhat less because it's not an architectural shingle roof. But you did that reduction when the house was new. So the point that I'm making here is that the roof is devastated. It is no longer a functioning, flat shingle roof. The other thing is that I don't understand how you can do compers when they're not comparable square footage. I understand that you have to find some way of addressing the value of the house, but I would differ that either raising the square footage or lowering the square footage of the house can be reduced to a consistent fraction, a la 500 square feet bigger, raise the square footage price by 10% or 8%. I don't see how a formula can be created that will allow you to compare houses that by the board's own definition are not comparable houses. Comparable is sold in the marketplace by your definition in 2020. There weren't any. And with that, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Wall.
Thank you.
If I may just address those in reverse order. They're comparable in location, they're comparable in quality, they're comparable in age. We picked the most similar. Adjustments for square footage is a long-standing industrial practice for appraisal. It's nothing new or unusual. And we have adjusted all of the comparables to make it like the subject. We raised the value, we added additional value to get to the adjusted sales price. On the first point, though, I will concede that there is an unusual, atypical situation on this property, and I think it would be appropriate to take the cost to cure away from the value of the like properties, because the subject to comparables don't have that situation. We have done this historically. I think it would be appropriate for probably this year only, because this is likely a problem that's going away soon, to remove the cost to cure from this property, because it was a situation that existed 1/1/2021, which was our date of appraisal.
So you're suggesting we revisit this later?
I suggest that the gentleman had a proposal of $17,000, I believe, we thought was reasonable. That sounds quite reasonable to me. My suggestion would be that we take a cost to cure of $17,000 away from our value this 1 year. We make a note to revisit it a year from now.
Okay.
Greg would be out there, ensure that the roof has been repaired, and then remove that adjustment, because that was an atypical situation that existed on this property the day of appraisal.
Also, perhaps by then, given the boom in buying and selling houses, especially in the part of the county we live in, there may then be comparable sales and
Well, please understand, this is a process we go through every number of years. We will not be looking at the market again until we do another reappraisal. Could be 4, 5, 6, 7 years from now. So we're living with the market today for many years. But we can't account for the characteristics of the home as they change.
And then I'm out of here. My argument that the fact that we've been more than remiss in not spending a nickel on interior or exterior upgrading, to me, even if there were size comparables, we would take a beating on that. And with that, I say thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. We'll hear one more case. We'll take a short break after this next case.
Partial ID number 07132-308, Donna and Robert Equalization.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine. Hope you are.
I am. My complaint here is simply based on math. When I submitted my challenge to the revaluation, I submitted a spreadsheet that questioned the appraisal process and the math that was associated with it. I expected to get a response back from an appraiser because that was the email I got back, and I got nothing except for a letter in the mail saying that it was denied. So the appraised value is based on square footage of the comps in my area. I took every comp that was listed, I broke it down by square foot to establish a price per square foot of every comp that was used to evaluate my property. I then averaged all those properties to come up with a price per square foot. That average price is $151.19. So this is based on the 20 or 21 comps that were used to identify my property. The valuation that was assigned based on those comps was $172.89. Math is math. 2 plus 2 always equals 4. There is no explanation how you can change the average square foot from $151.19 to $172.87. I had no plans of being here. I thought that I'd have a conversation with whoever came up with this math so that could be explained to me, and unfortunately that's not the case. So that's what brings me here. You have in front of you the comps that were used, the prices per square foot, the average price per square foot, and then what was assigned to my property. It just doesn't make any sense.
Any questions, Mr. Ackelman?
I think the question I had was on the next page. I see it. It's looking for the sale dates on his comp. I see those now.
All right. Let's hear from the county.
Yeah, so on this one, we, Compass the tool that we typically use to check the values. This property was assessed at $203,300. And I put in the 3 most comparable sales from 2020. It suggested the value of the house would be $215,200. So we were about $12,000 under what the market suggests. So that's why I did not change the value on this one.
Okay, and I asked if you used 3 properties. Why was I sent a packet that showed 21 properties that you used as comps, and now you're evaluating it on 3?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
So when I received the initial package, and you go to the link, it shows you the list of comps that were used to do the
Beg your
evaluation.
pardon? That's all right. Talk to
sorry?
me. Just speak to me.
When I received the package of the revaluation, it gave me a link. You go to that link, it gave me 21 comps. The county is now referring to 3. How do we go from 21 comps that was used to evaluate my property to 3? That's my question.
You used the 21 that was sent to you to do your average, right?
I used the 21 that you have in front of you, which was given to me by the county in the initial valuation. I was provided a link, I went on that link, I printed out the 21 comparable properties, and now they're telling me that it's 3. That makes no sense.
I think I can shed some light on this.
Give me 1 minute.
Sure.
All right, go ahead.
Obviously, we use the schedule of values to drive a value. We use this third-party product, Copper, to give the taxpayers a tool to see what comparable properties are selling for. Kind of is a double check. That isn't how we value the property. It's a double check available to the taxpayer and available to us. It has defaults when you go to it. It'll default to their neighborhood plus or minus 20%, 19 or 20 sales. So it's going to give maybe 3, maybe 20, maybe 40, maybe 0. But they're all adjustable. You can get closer or farther away and get more similar to your property or less similar. Evidently, the taxpayer took the defaults and ran with them. We narrowed it down to 3 or 4 properties that were most similar. So I think that's what's happened here.
Okay, all right, that makes 0 sense. All right, you send me a packet, you reevaluate my property based on 21 comps, and now you change the rules to 3? That makes 0 sense. If you're gonna do it based on 3, send me the 3. Then maybe the math that makes sense. If you do the math on the 21, which was the package that I was provided, that's what you gotta live by. If you're gonna live by 3, send me the 3 and we live with it. You can't change the rules midway through.
Now I'm looking, the 3 you used, I don't see but 1 on the 21 you sent him. I don't see the other 2.
Again, yeah.
So
I have not seen the 21, so I really can't address specifics.
Okay.
I'm assuming it was the default when you just open up the system and put in that address.
It was the list that was sent by the county
Yeah.
on the link of the email that I provided when I submitted the initial
okay,
claim.
all right. Any questions for Mr. Ackerman again?
I'm good right now.
With the county? Any question? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir.
Have a good day.
We'll take about a 5-minute break. How's the Bentons doing?
All right, Dave. Make sure you don't turn your lights off.
This is our, this is check. I understand what you're saying. Thanks.